talking. We have progress. We have touchdown. And you tell me if you can't hear well, I'll move the mic even closer.
Closer. You need to get closer.
How's that? Okay. So this is Council Connections. It is May 16th, 2024. I sound like Michelle. This is Council Connections for a Thursday. And today I have two lovely people who have been at Woodland Pond for quite a while to come and talk about themselves and also about the play readers groups that they belong to. So I have Shalom Schwartz and Jean Crawford, and I'm going to ask them a little bit about themselves so that you have an idea, new and old residents, you have an idea of who they are and where they came from. So which one of you wants to start first?
Ladies first.
Oh, you have your own microphone.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'll put it down here. Well, I came from a little town in New Jersey, not far from the New York Broadway. And as I grew up, of course, I got acquainted with theater, and I've loved it ever since. You said quite a while. I've been here 2 weeks after this opened. I moved in. So I have been here quite a while. And the first year that play reading began was 2010. And then I went to see the first performance. It was The Odd Couple, but the odd couple were women instead of men, because of course, it seems we have a lot more women than men around here. And that was true of play readers. But we had a woman, her name was Beverly Brum, and she had been associated with the New Paltz College, and she was in charge of it. So after I saw that performance, and there's still some people who were in that here, I think particularly of Roger Leonard. He was part of the cast of that performance. But Beverly, I found out about play reading, and I started in the next group that started to meet in the fall of 2010. And I've loved it, every bit of it. It's just amazing. Our present director, Richard, gave us a list of plays we had read, and it's astounding the number of plays we've read. Now we're starting again because some of us don't remember some of the plays we read. But getting back, what really got me started was, of course, high school. There was a thespians club in our high school, and I immediately joined, and I ended up in the plays in the local high school. And I've not been active in theater through the other years until I came here, but I have done an awful lot of public speaking and memorization and being in charge of programs and what have you. So that's a bit of the theater too, I think.
Thank you, Jean. And Shalom, you want to tell us a little bit about you? Not yet.
Okay.
We'll get to the questions.
Okay. I am not quite the veteran you are. We've been here about 7 years, and both Pnina and I, my wife Pnina, joined Play Readers just a few months after we arrived, when we found out about it. And I've been in it since. Pnina unfortunately had to drop out, but we both loved it all of the time. And it gave us both an opportunity to express our desire to be many different people. One of the things I like about it most is playing with the characters, trying to get into them, trying out accents, even if it's the wrong accent, getting excited, getting angry, listening or saying curse words that I would never say day to day, but they're in the text. You say what it says in the play. How did I get into theater? It started in either first or second grade. I'm trying to place it. We had a skit which I wrote at the time. And since I had written it, I was the main character. The teacher had me play the Easter Bunny, which is what I wrote about. I don't know why I wrote about it. I don't remember anything about it except that it was an awful lot of fun. But I didn't do any theater thereafter, practically at all. I too did a lot of public speaking, even as a kid in grade school and certainly in high school. But I never got to play different roles. I was always me. And that's boring compared to the options that one has. So when I got here, I said, this is the opportunity. We went once, we listened to what was going on, and it was delightful. And so been in it ever since.
There you are. Well, that's terrific. I'm sure it's very exciting. And we've had a number of instructors. I've been here 11 years, and in that course of time, we've had 2 or 3 instructors, and they all have a little different style. If you've been here long enough, perhaps you can talk a little bit about that.
Just as Shalom was saying, I thought I should tell you a little bit about that. We only had one group for many, many years. After Beverly left, which is about, I think, 3 years she was with us, Don Wiley came, and he was an absolutely wonderful person to know and so talented himself, because of course he was involved in not only a professor at New Paltz, but he was also in the local. I don't know if any of you have gone to those performances up on the road to Mohawk. Forget what they call that group. Yeah. Dennis, yeah. But anyway, we used to do that, and he was very involved in that, as is Richard, our present director. And we've had many good times with him, that we ended up getting to be about 20 people in that group in the game room. And it seemed more than we really, it worked too well. So we decided to ask Woodland Pond to begin another group. And they did, as you know. So now we have one at 2:30 and one at 4:15. And they both have about a dozen people on their list. But we're always glad to have someone new come. And if at all, we want them to feel they're welcome. And so that's it. And then, of course, Don went along for many years, and finally he gave it up, and Richard came on. And Richard's a lot of fun. He was a teacher in New Paltz, and then in the Ulster Community College when he had retired. And Don knew him very well because they'd worked together. So every so often he bumps into Don, and they talk over the play readers and come up with a new idea. And it's just been a wonderful experience to get to know those 2 or 3 people who had so much talent and were willing to give it their time to us.
Yeah, let me say a couple more words about our leaders, I guess you might call them. When I started, Don was here, but only for a month or 2. So I barely got to know him, although I already knew him because he's my son's next door neighbor. But Richard came in. Richard was in many ways Don's student. Richard has his own style, very different from Don. I could see immediately. Richard does a tremendous amount of research on the plays we are reading. So he gives us a lot of background, where they come from, and he also tries to find plays for which he can show us videos, either of movies they made from the plays or just snippets of movies or theater which are available on video. And then we can compare how they do things to the way we do things. But he shows us those things only after we have read the play, so as not to prejudice us. Reading these plays is an interesting challenge because we read them absolutely cold. That is, we don't see what we're going to read before we get into it. The most we get is Richard saying to us, well, Sally is the young girl who's rebelling against her parents. That's about what you know on Sally. And then you have to get to know her as you play the role. The process is that we sit around a table and we read whatever happens to come up. Richard breaks up the plays into chunks so that each of us gets to read quite a bit, but we never know which character we're going to get until we get it. And then we just play the best we can and have fun with it. And a personal observation, I've felt freer over time to get into it and forget inhibitions. And I've observed a similar thing about other people in the group. And I think the quality of reading improves as you're there a while. So people who may start out rather awkward and uncomfortable really get into it after a while.
Well, it sounds very exciting. Actually, I was in Play Readers when Don was here for several years. And then I guess I left when he left. I was so attached to him. I really was. And I remember he moved to New Mexico for a while. And you're telling me he's back in New Paltz now?
Oh, yes.
Oh, really? Oh, well, maybe one of these days I'll have
Actually,
pleasure.
his son is Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And his son lives down there, and they used to go during the winter. And then for a while, I think Don stayed longer. But no, he's here.
Oh, that's wonderful to know.
So we're hoping someday he'll come by.
Yes. And let me know when he does, because I'd love to say hello to him. But it's exciting to hear how the process is similar. Now, I have a question to ask you. When I was in Play Readers, one of the things that people had difficulty with was the fact that anybody who wanted to come into Play Readers came into Play Readers. And some people really couldn't read. They either couldn't see very well, so they could not, or they could not get the gist of the character. And so rather than there be a flow of reading from person to person, there was always a stop, and Don had to reorient the person and get them back on the page. And it was very frustrating because if you got into the play and you wanted to see that flow, it didn't happen. And several people left. Does that happen in your group?
Well, of course, that can happen. But being a woodland ponder
Yes.
and feeling that we have to be patient with people if there's things that they can't quite do and not, cause any really problem. I haven't never felt it a problem. I've been willing to wait it out or have the correction made. And the thing about, naturally, it's going to be when you consider some of the people that we've had. But I wanted to tell you also, there's a list of the plays we've done for you, the programs we've had for you. I particularly wanted to point out that not only we used playwrights, the stories from playwrights. It's hard to break up a big play, into any small parts. So we always went for smaller presentations. And yet Dick Barry wrote 2 complete programs for us while we were at Play Reader. And they were a lot of fun because it was something that he had done. And he sort of told me, I don't know, that he sort of fitted us to the character that he gave us. And I was Hedda Hopper with a nice big hat, thanks to Ann Hiller. But it's just fun to be there. And I think, as Shalom said, as you progress, you begin to find it much easier to make this transition from yourself and to the character you're playing. And that's really what it is all about, is looking at the role and finding in it that character. And then you can really take off and read it very well. Don't you think so, Shalom? Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
become
think
that
that's
person.
very, very much the case. Richard, I don't know about Don because I really didn't see him operating, but Richard first is extremely supportive. If someone's having some trouble, there's no criticism that comes out, and the group has the attitude that you described of, okay, that's who we are. We have problems once in a while. And as time goes on, newer people have fewer and fewer problems because they learn the system and they do quite well. If somebody can't do it, they feel it themselves and they'll leave. They won't stick around. So I haven't felt it's a problem that I have to put up with somebody's bad reading or interrupting. Things run quite smoothly that way. Let me stop there. There's something.
So in other words, people be shy about joining the play readers. They shouldn't feel like, well, I can't do that. I don't read well. I don't like to be exposed. They should feel that they can become part of the group, even if they have some slight difficulty in terms of doing that. And they've never done anything like that before. Of course, what you're describing is more what actors, professional actors and actresses do when they're reading a play, because you're playing the characters rather than just reading the play and not putting any theatrical effort into it. So you're really becoming actors and actresses as you go on more and more. You try. Well, trying is almost everything, and this is something that is open to everybody in Woodland Pond. Anybody who's interested in doing that kind of thing, who may never have even thought about it. Some people who just are interested in plays, period, and may not think about performing in any way. And then there are also people that are just curious, but they're all welcome. Everybody is welcome. And I think Shalom is right about if it gets too heavy for people or it makes them too anxious or whatever, then they take themselves out and say, this is not for me. Is there anything else that you want to say about play readers? How big is your group? How big are your groups now?
Well, our group, I think, ranges between 10 and 12 there each week. That's the second group. What about the first group?
It's about the same with us. It is a good size because by the time you get around that table reading all these scripts, it helps not to have too many people, but well, you get a chance to speak more, you get a chance to read the scripts more if it's a smaller group. But I think it also helps to just have that closeness. Did you think?
Yeah, I had wanted to comment that after each day's session, we usually take, after we stop reading play, and Richard says, any comments? People want to say anything. And sometimes very interesting discussions come up, disagreements about the meaning of a particular speech, or somebody saying, I really love this speech. And Richard says, read it. And you get a second shot at reading it, and doing it in a different way if you want. And so we are able to get a little more depth of understanding in what we are doing.
Are you going to be doing anything for the community in the near future? Why don't you tell us a little about that?
Well, putting on a performance here is very difficult because of the sound system. And so many people setting up for a large group with all microphones and not all of them working properly got to be quite a difficult thing. So we changed when having a performance 2 times a year. And now we're doing one every other month. And we're only using a few people in each, I should say that, but then the next one will be a lot of people, I think. But there will only be one person needing a microphone at a time, which will make it much different. And so it's on the, now here I should have looked that up, the third Tuesday, I believe, of every month. We try to come up with am I right?
Every other month.
Every other month, I'm sorry, every other month. And there is one in May, and it's basically Thurber. I don't know if we've done other Thurber programs, perhaps you come to some of them, but most of them are the fables that he wrote. And it's going to be quite an amusing thing, I think, for everybody to hear. And that would be, of course, in May, so that we won't, well, July would be the next month, but we'll see what happens by July. Maybe we'll take a vacation.
Yeah, the decision as to who performs is really up to you. Richard doesn't say, you do this, rather you say, I'd like to perform this, or I wouldn't like to perform it. For the first few sessions, I was opposed to appearing altogether, and I wouldn't do it. But I came around when offered a part that I said, oh, that would be fun. But you're always free. There's no sense of compulsion in the group, and that's really very important to us.
So for new people, they don't have to feel like they're going to have to perform and be on display, and especially when they don't know the rest of us very well. That would be very difficult, I think. But within each group that you have you gotten to develop friendships or relationships with the people in the group, beyond just, hi, see you next week kind of thing? You want to talk about?
Yeah, I think the group functions as a good source of friendships because, in part, you are revealing yourself as you do this. You feel freer, you lose inhibitions. That makes it a lot easier to make friendships with people, to become friends, to know how they tick, that you've laughed with them, you've cried with them in a sense. You've cried metaphorically, perhaps, but inside you were crying the characters and so were they. We read a play, M. Butterfly, that many of you may know. Very, very touching play. And we were all very touched by it. And the shared feeling does a lot to build friendships.
Yes, often, as you know, Well, even when you sit around sometimes in the dining room with a few people at the table, something comes up and it just takes off, and you find what you're sharing. So I think that happens in play readers, especially when you're rehearsing with just a few people. You get to know them very well and get to know a little more than you knew before. So it's always good to be together. We always enjoy being together. I think everyone wants to help someone else if they're having a problem, and I think it's a very wonderful experience to have that. It just is wonderful. You can tell I really love.
I can tell that both of you have gotten an awful lot out of this experience, and that's wonderful to see, and not only to hear about. And I hope the people out in the audience, the people who are listening in, or the people who will watch it later on YouTube, observe that it's one of the highlights, I think, of what Woodland Pond does. And people stay, you're an example of how long people stay with it. So it's not something people go in and a year later they go out of, or that kind of thing. So that's wonderful to hear about, and very encouraging. And we're looking for places where people can form relationships with others in the community, because that's really very important. And we encourage people. So to all of you out there, I would say, don't be afraid of play readers. Take a gamble, take a chance, go in once, and you'll probably be hooked if these people are anything like the others in the group. Is there anything else you want to say about?
Think of anything else.
You? Yes.
One thing. I'd like to invite you back.
Oh, maybe. I have a lot on my plate right now, and it seems every week I get something more on my plate like this. So I will definitely I've thought about it a lot, but it's very difficult to make a commitment. I think that you have a question, or you,
We've
all right.
quite a lot of play readers here. Put your hand up if you're a play reader. Yeah, see you.
Yes, I recognize some of you. So I was going to turn this over and ask the audience if they have questions. Yakov, are you going to take the microphone around? Okay.
I wanted to ask about the range of material. Are they all plays that were originally in English, or some from other cultures that had been translated? Are any of them plays that you've seen in, let's say, in the theater, or like say in school, it was done, or have been made into movies that you might have seen? Or is it all just new to pretty much everyone in the group?
I just brought along with me to show you the kind of the number of plays we've been reading. There's hundreds of plays, but no, Wayne, interesting enough, Charles Platt, for instance, who lived in New York City, who attended theater all the time, has seen a good many of the plays that we're reading. And I know that's true of others. When anyone has seen it or remembered the actors in it, what have you, they bring it up. Yes.
You know, one of the things I marvel at is all the people who have seen so many of the plays, who remember who played what, who've seen two versions of the plays. And for those of you who know nothing and have forgotten whatever you know about plays, you can feel comfortable, because that's me. I don't remember any actors. I don't remember any plays I've seen, but I really enjoy listening to those who do, and they've got a lot to say. You asked about foreign language plays. I do not recall any that while we've been there.
Well, I have the list, and Richard has broken it down into who was the director or the leader. So he has from 2010 to 2015 where there was Beverly Brum and Don Wildey. And at that time, he did a lot of older plays, like there's Lillian Hellman, Ibsen. He did a number of Ibsen plays, Ionesco. And as I remembered, even older plays like Beckett. I mean, it was a much different kind of configuration. And then when you get to his, from 2018 to 2024, you have Tennessee Williams, Alfred Hitchcock, Neil Simon, Dylan Thomas. So you can see that it's a different flavor. It's being expressed who they are in the plays that they choose. And that's very interesting.
It's also a matter of suggestions from the members of the group. If someone comes in and says, this is a great play, I'd like to read it, Richard will look at it. He works with his wife to put together the play in a form that we can actually read, which means the print is substantial. There's space between the lines so that our old eyes can manage doing this. And if he can find a good script to copy and do something with, he has even transcribed movies for us. What did we do? A movie that he had transcribed that was a lot of fun. I've forgotten the name. Casablanca he did, and he did one other as well. There's tremendous variation. Well, Oslo was a play, may as well mention, which was written by by Spencer's son, and won a Tony. And I must say, I think it was a great play, and it was great fun to actually read. And it's been made into a movie. We haven't seen the movie yet.
You can't get much more modern than one of our residents having a son who's a very well-known playwright. That's pretty much up with the times. And he has another play. I don't know where it is right now, Spencer. Let's give JT a little plus here. What is the name of his play? Corruption?
Corruption, yes.
Corruption. And where is it now? I know it was
Lincoln Center. It was at Lincoln Center. It's closed. He's now revising it for a British audience. So it'll be showing in London probably in the fall or the winter.
Terrific. He happens to be a very good friend of my son, so it's a little bit inbreeding here. We'll be giving him an extra plug. But does anybody else have questions?
Yeah,
Betsy?
I have one comment. Yeah. So it's all in the family. Is that the play?
The play All in the Family, right?
No.
That's right. No, that's right. It's all in the family.
But no, I mean, it's a remarkable program. I mean, that we have so many people involved here and actively participating in that. One question I have is, you call it play readers, but I understand there is a little bit of play acting. Is that, where do you draw the line on how do you differentiate that?
What, I'm not quite sure what he's asking. Well, you're not memorizing. I mean, first of all, they're not memorizing, which makes a big difference when you have to commit all of that. Excuse me, people.
Hey.
That's one of the big things. I mean, that you differentiate between reading and acting, because acting, you have to really commit that to memory, and then you have to become much more of the character than when you're just reading. So reading is like the beginning of acting out a role. Betsy, have you asked your
I was in play readers for a while, and one of the fun things is that you don't know if you're going to be playing a male part or a female part. It's quite random the way he assigns them, and they go around the table and the next person gets the assignment. And in an afternoon, you may be playing 2 or 3 different people, depending on how it's going. So it's quite variable.
I was wondering if both groups do the same play, and do you try to keep more or less in sync? And is there any interaction between the two groups, either deliberately or accidentally, that you care to comment on?
Yeah, both groups are reading the same play and keep in sync. If one gets ahead of the other one, then we talk a little more about the play or something else to fill in the time. But we try not to get out of sync. And no, there isn't any coordination.
And June Finer was making the copies for everybody and keeping track of the scripts. And she did an enormous job to keep that group moving.
Yeah, June
Is
has
she
been
still
in it.
doing it?
June has been in it since the beginning almost too. And she does take that responsibility, which is a wonderful job. You'll see her at the copy machine, putting off the film, and then those notebooks, she's snapping them into the notebook. And I
give you the microphone. It'd be better for the recording if you speak into the microphone.
Thanks. Yeah, the two groups are cooperating in a certain way because Charles Platt from the first group and I are reading a scene from a Thurber scene, and so we're having to rehearse together. And I'm not sure what the Thurber thing is. I know our group, group 2, is doing some short bits with pictures illustrated on the screen, and maybe other people.
I have to tell you my experience. I ate with a resident for a few months. She was composed, quiet, organized. I saw the play that night and she was a different person, absolutely a different person. And it was wonderful to realize she could make that transformation and be so real, you know.
Yes, that's what I was saying. You really have to step into that person, not be you any longer. We do cooperate with each other, depending on the performance or the play that is being. He takes people from both groups, and then they rehearse it together and perform it.
Are there any other questions? Because if they're not, I think that we're going to say adieu. You want to say it in another language? Say it in Hebrew.
Shalom.
And you
We'll
have
take a bow.
take a bow.
I just want to thank you because it's the first time we do a double person interview. I mean, in the program, I mean, and the council connections. And I think it worked wonderfully. Thanks for volunteering.
This one.